Ciao ragazzi! This video will explain how to express the time in Italian. Last term you learnt to tell the time and you learnt the question che ore sono, what time is it? And the response sono le 2, it's 2 o'clock, or sono le 3, it's 3 o'clock, etc. This term, however, since we are dealing with the topic of transport, we are looking at a slightly different question. We want to know at what time something is happening or someone is leaving. And in Italian, this question is a che ora. We will, of course, also be learning to answer this question. So by learning to ask and answer this question, we will be able to talk about the times we leave or we arrive, and also the times that we take certain modes of transport. In the examples and in the exercises, we will be using the verbs arrivare, to arrive, prendere, to take or to get, and partire, to leave or to depart. So you may need to revisit your notes on these verbs. So our question is a che ora, at what time? And answering this question is quite simple for the majority of time expressions. We simply say alle and then add our number to reflect the hour. So alle 2 at 2 o'clock, alle 3 at 3 o'clock, alle 4 at 4 o'clock, alle 5 at 5 o'clock, alle 6 at 6 o'clock, alle 7 at 7 o'clock, alle 8 at 8 o'clock, alle 9 at 9 o'clock, alle 10 at 10 o'clock, alle 11 at 11 o'clock, and alle 12 at 12 o'clock. There are some special cases that are slightly different. For example, we would say all'una for 1 o'clock, at 1 o'clock. And the reason why we don't say alla una is because in that case we would have a followed immediately by u, and the two vowels together are a bit tricky to pronounce. So alla una is more difficult to say. So what we do is we remove the final a here from alla and we replace it with an apostrophe. So all'una is much easier to pronounce. We also have two other expressions, a mezzogiorno, at midday, and a mezzanotte, at midnight. And you can remember these by thinking about the two greetings in Italian. Buongiorno means good morning, and of course that relates to the daytime. And buonanotte, good night. And of course we have the word notte here in this expression. Mezzo or mezza, both of these mean half in Italian. So halfway through the day, midday, mezzogiorno, and halfway through the night, midnight, mezzanotte. So let's stop now and do some practice. Here you have 7 sentences, including time expressions that you will need to write in Italian. So pause the video, use your notes, and attempt the exercises before you then continue to check your work. So here are the answers. Number 1, io arrivo alle 3. Number 2, tu arrivi alle 6. Number 3, noi arriviamo a Palermo a mezzogiorno. Number 4, lui prende il treno all'1. Number 5, loro prendono l'autobus alle 11. Number 6, noi partiamo a mezzanotte e arriviamo alle 2. And number 7, voi partite alle 9 o alle 10. You'll notice here that our subject pronouns are in brackets, and that's because in Italian they are not really necessary. Our verb endings already tell us who we are talking about. So when you have arrivo with an O ending, you know that the person is talking about themselves. So anything in brackets here is optional. So sometimes you need to provide more information about the time of the day you are referring to. Italians don't use AM or PM like we do in English to tell the difference between 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening. So the following expressions are necessary. We have di mattina, in the morning, di pomeriggio, in the afternoon, and di sera, in the evening. So time for some more practice. Here are 6 sentences. Pause the video and try to write them in Italian. So time to check your answers now. Number 1. Io parto alle 5 di mattina. Number 2. Tu parti di mattina o di pomeriggio? Number 3. Noi arriviamo a Palermo alle 7 di sera. Number 4. Lei prende l'aereo alle 4 di mattina? Number 5. Loro non partono di sera, partono di mattina. And number 6. Noi partiamo a mezzogiorno e arriviamo alle 3 di pomeriggio. So up until this point, we've talked about times on the hour. Let's look at incorporating minutes to those times. So there are 2 key words that we need when we want to add minutes to our time expressions. We need e, meaning and or plus, and we also need the word meno, which means minus. So to add minutes to our times, we simply say the time on the hour and then follow that with e and the number of minutes. So for example, alle 12:05, alle 12:10, alle 12:15, alle 12:20, alle 12:25, alle 12:30, alle 12:35, alle 12:40, alle 12:45, alle 12:50, alle 12:55. So obviously, when we are adding minutes to our times, it's very important to be familiar with the Italian numbers from 5 to 55. Now pause the video to complete some practice of times that include minutes. So again, we have 6 sentences that you need to try to translate into Italian. So let's check the answers now. Number 1. Il treno parte alle 6:20. Number 2. L'autobus parte alle 11:40. Number 3. Noi arriviamo a Palermo alle 7:10. Number 4. Lei prende l'aereo alle 4:30 di mattina. Number 5. Loro non partono alle 10:25, partono alle 9:25. And number 6. Voi partite alle 5:55 di mattina o alle 5:45 di sera? In both English and Italian, there can be more than one way to express the same time. So when it's 12:15, we could also say it's 12:15. In Italian, we would say alle 12:15, which literally means at 12:15. When it's 12:30, we could also say 12:30 in English, 12:30. In Italian, we would say alle 12:30. Some Italians say le 12:30, which means exactly the same thing. Literally, it means at 12:30. Now, as we get closer to the next hour, we could use expressions like 20 to 1, or 5 to 1, or 10 to 1. Italian has a similar way of expressing this, but using the word meno. So, for example, all'1:20. So this is like saying at 1 o'clock minus 20 minutes, or 20 to 1, as we would say in English. You would say all'1:15 or all'1:15 if you want to express that it's 1 o'clock minus 15 minutes, or 1:15. all'1:10, so at 1 o'clock minus 10 minutes, or at 10 to 1. And then finally, all'1:5, which would be like saying 5 minutes to 1, at 5 to 1. So here are 6 more sentences to practice. Pause the video and do your best to write these time expressions in Italian. So time to check the responses now. Number 1, il treno parte alle 7:30. Number 2, l'autobus parte alle 2:15. Number 3, noi arriviamo a Palermo alle 10:45. Number 4, lei prende l'aereo alle 8:10. Number 5, noi partiamo all'1:15 e arriviamo alle 2:15. And number 6, loro non partono alle 5:05, partono alle 5:20. So to summarize, we have our key question, a che ora, at what time. And here we have all of the different elements of telling the time, of stating at what time in Italian. So on the hour, if we want to add minutes to those times, if we want to subtract minutes from the next hour, and if we want to specify which time of the day we are talking about. So you now have had some practice in providing information about the time in Italian, and this will be very useful when you are providing detail about the times at which you arrive, depart, or use different types of transport. So remember to speak to your teacher if you have any questions, and continue to practice as much as possible to develop your confidence and your skills. Arrivederci e buon lavoro.